What's up, everybody? So I made a video a few weeks ago that was talking about this Weakaura that makes it a lot easier to play Shadow Priest. But since making that video, I've got a lot of questions. And admittedly, when I made that video, I had only seen the Weakaura for about 20 minutes. I hadn't used it in a raid or dungeon. So I've used this for the last 2 weeks in all of my raids, and I wanted to answer a lot of the questions that have been popping up. Number one is are you going to get banned for using it? No. Does it still work? Yes. And then just an assortment of other questions to help you hopefully use it better to be more effective for yourself. So what I want to do right now is actually just hop into a target dummy and just kind of show you what it's like to use the Weakaura now. So the way this works is essentially, instead of, let me back up for a second. The way Mind Flay traditionally works is after a tick of Mind Flay happens, you want to push that next spell or that next Mind Flay immediately, because if you're channeling a spell, it automatically gets canceled into your next spell. This Weakaura prevents that. So if you look, I'm going to push my next Mind Flay just before the second tick of damage. So right here, you can see there's a small stutter, and then the next tick of Mind Flay happens. Now, previously in the last video, I showed that stutter before that next tick of Mind Flay lasted about half a second. It was actually ridiculously long and felt really bad to play with. But Blizzard has put in a fix to this Weakaura. Now, this is probably the most that they're going to do to change how it works, but essentially instead of it being like half a second before that next tick of Mind Flay, the max wait time is 190 milliseconds, so just under 20% of a second, if that makes sense to you. So the Weakaura still does work, and you want to make sure that you have it set up to your ping. So my ping here, I don't know if you can see this, pretty small, is 21 ms. Now, if I open the Weakaura and go to Shadow Priest Fake Queue, essentially you're going to have world ping offset and absolute offset. All of this is explained in the WAGO page, so if you have any questions, I would just read that because it's going to explain it way better than I can. But essentially, my ping on average is usually 23. Right now it's 21. But what that means is my world ping offset, I have at -10, my absolute offset at 13. Added together, those get 23, and that's essentially what the instructions say to do is whatever your world ping is, just make sure that these numbers, like if you take away the negative from world ping offset, they add up to be your ping in game. Okay, so what's next? Are you gonna get banned for using this? No. Absolutely not. A lot of people have been using it. I've been using it for about 2 weeks. You know, Blizzard hasn't explicitly said you're not going to get banned, but based on the fix that they've done, if they wanted this to be removed from the game, they would have done that already. There is absolutely zero risk, and you can quote me on that. Nobody's going to get banned using this. Now, I've said I've used it for the last 2 weeks. How have my results been? It's actually been really nice. So I have conflicting opinions on this. One is that it does make the game easier to play and removes a lot of the challenge from playing Shadow Priest. The flip side is, if in an encounter, it took about 80% of my brain power to be focused on my rotation and 20% to be focused on the fight itself, now it's probably about 5 to 10% is focused on the rotation and the other 90% is focused on the fight itself, which means I can basically do the same damage, if not more, by focusing less on the rotation itself. This allows me, and somebody who's an officer in my guild, to call things out for other people, to try to make sure that the fight goes smoothly. And, you know, for a fight like Festergut or Rotface doesn't really matter, but for Putricide, for Sindragosa, for Lich King, these are all things that are extremely beneficial. So yes, it does make it easier, but the other reason that I don't feel that bad using it is because when Cataclysm comes out, just part of Cataclysm is that they change how Mind Flay works. So right now, you know, Mind Flay is a channeled spell, and if you go to cast one in the middle of a current cast of Mind Flay, it's just going to cancel that and start your next spell. But in Cataclysm, what it's essentially going to do is whatever remaining duration you have on your current Mind Flay, it's going to add that to your next cast, which means it kind of works the same way that this Weakaura does. It just takes a different approach. Instead of freezing the game and waiting until that next tick occurs, it essentially takes that extra time, adds it to your next Mind Flay so that you seamlessly go from one Mind Flay into the next, and you don't even, there is no difference between whether you clip your Mind Flay, you know, 500 milliseconds after your next tick or 200 milliseconds, because that extra time is just going to be added onto your next Mind Flay, which means, if anything, using this Weakaura is kind of preparing you for how Cataclysm is going to be with Mind Flay. So that's probably the main reason why I don't feel like we're necessarily cheating the system by using this. Yes, it does make the game easier, but I think quality of life is something that is kind of always been on Blizzard's mind when it comes to rotations. Like they want things to be, they want a certain level of skill cap, but they don't want to make it like, I don't know what the right word is, but they don't want it to be unintuitive, right? And I think the current iteration of Mindflay is unintuitive, which is again why they made this change, 15 years ago, going from Wrath into Kata. So it's something that if you do feel a little bit unsure about using because you think it takes away from the authenticity of playing Shadow Priest, don't use it. I would highly recommend if that's something that you feel that, don't. I personally don't have an issue with it because I do think that Shadow Priest is going to be very similar to this in Cataclysm, but it's just something where, your mileage may vary. So depending on how you feel, you might not want to use it. Now, what were the results? Did it actually improve my play? A little bit. I'm someone who already spent a lot of time at perfecting Shadow Priest, so I was already pretty good at it. It definitely reduced the amount of time between mind flays for me, and I think the more important thing is that I don't need to spend as much brain power while playing the rotation. So even if I play, I've had fights where using this Weakaura, I play exactly the same as I've played previously before the Weakaura. But my attention is so much less focused on my rotation, and I can focus on calling things out for other people in the raid, focusing on mechanics, making sure that other people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, because I'm able to very easily do my rotation, focus on what I'm supposed to be doing, and then focus on what other people are supposed to be doing. So from like an officer / raid leader perspective, not that I am a raid leader, but just somebody who is looking out for what other people are doing, it makes everything way, way easier. So ultimately, I do think I'm going to keep using this for the rest of the expansion. I don't think it's necessary, to be honest. Like, I don't know that the top parsing Shadow Priest will absolutely be using this. I think it makes the game easier, but I don't think if you're already someone who's really good at the game, I don't think you're going to notice a huge change. Again, it just gives you a little bit more leeway when you press your spells after a mind play. In terms of making sure you don't miss a tick of damage. But I think ultimately, if you're somebody who has been min-maxing the class, that's pretty minor in terms of your overall damage. So that's all that I wanted to say. If you do have any further questions, please let me know, or join my Discord where I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. But that's the update I wanted to give, and best of luck to you in your Shadow Priesting for the rest of Wrath. Anyway, my name is Pantspace, and I'll see you in the next one.